Senator Cohen is with us, and he's going to take us through this great Senate file, which is Senate File 2785. Chair Cohen.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Let me just offer a couple of introductory comments relative to this. The supplemental finance bill this year is a little bit different than what we've had to do in the past, where obviously the economy has to a very good extent turned around. State finances are in better shape. 4 years ago, when I presented the last supplemental finance bill, my thought on the floor was this is becoming very tiresome as I presented the bill, because we had years of deficits. I was actually, I won't say pleased, that's maybe a little bit unfair, but when Senator Roebling did such a very good job of chairing this committee, I was glad I was not in her position given the magnitude of the last deficit. So this bill on one hand has been easier, on the other hand raises pressures just because of expectations. Each chair is going to have the chance to explain his or her article, the spreadsheet, what they've tried to do. I want to just offer kind of an overall flavor, and if chairs don't mind, I'm going to pick out a couple, 2 or 3 of them. I'm not going to go through it article by article. But it's a combination of attempting to take some of the surplus money and spend it in ways that are relatively reasonable, and I think provide some progress for the state in some selected areas. It's also coupled with being a bill that, in effect, is partially a deficiency appropriations bill with appropriations that needed to be that have to be made. So just to give members kind of an overall flavor. When we get a chance to listen to Senator Uyghur, we'll find that a centerpiece of his bill is an emphasis on early education, early childhood, ECFE, learning readiness. And I think folks of both parties understand the importance of early childhood and the fact that we should have done this 30 years ago, but that his bill will reflect the effort on this legislature, which has been on a bipartisan basis, to take a look at what happens in terms of early childhood. There are also some provisions spread throughout this bill in a couple of different divisions relative to something that I just happen to think is just a disgrace, not only within this state but throughout the country, and that's the achievement gap, and some efforts to try to start addressing that. We have, to show you kind of the contrast, in Senator Bonoff's bill, we deal with the deficiency of the MnSCU budget relative to their contracts. Yet there's also something that Senator Bonoff has worked on, Senator Sieben, myself, that's pretty exciting, and that's the request from the University of Minnesota and Mayo to provide some state support for the regenerative medicine program. Just to offer a flavor, when Dr. Andre Tierzak was in my office, and I've talked to him a couple times subsequent to that, he made a comment that was very striking, which was that as doctors, we do a very good job of treating symptoms, but we do a very poor job of actually curing people. And he talked at some length with myself about what they are doing at Mayo. And so that's a place where I think all of us felt that this is something that we need to participate in. Senator Laurie has a number of pieces of his bill, and again, he'll talk about it in some detail, but we recognize that we've tried to help out the people who take care of the most vulnerable in our society. So something that's been of some, I will suggest, bipartisan support as best I can tell, the attempt to deal with the residential care facility workers, which we did not do last year. So I could go through this. Senator Thomasoni, who's not here, what more can you say about his article? It gives everybody pause, and we'll have a chance to listen to Senator Thomasoni. But I want to have each of the chairs present their articles in detail. Now, let me tell you what's happened in the last couple of days, and then I'm going to go through the spreadsheet. When you put together a bill like this, and you get, and this is the way it's always worked, in the years I've been here, and I can't speak for what's taken place over the decades, but as best I know, when we start annual sessions, this is the way things have been handled. We'll get the articles from division chairs. Now, I don't want to get into a long history. In the old days, you had 4 divisions, plus K-12. Now, obviously, we have more divisions, and so more chairs. But we have each person presenting their article within the supplemental finance process. Senator Stumpf can also make a reference to some of the history in this place. And there are always going to be some nickel-dime changes made within the appropriations. And I'll go through this, but I'll give you just one flavor of a small change. In Senator Tomassoni's division, I think Senator Brown was the author of the request to provide some small money to the Mille Lacs community relative to what's going on with the walleye fishing, and to have monies provided for the combination of the band, Mille Lacs Band, and the greater Mille Lacs community. In Senator Tomassoni's division, the money was taken out of the tourism budget, and the folks at tourism, weren't crazy about that. There was the ability simply to transfer that to just a general fund appropriation. So that's an example of a smaller nickel-dime kind of difference that always happens. Here is the major thing that's taken place, and on one hand I defend it, on the other hand I'm not crazy about it. I was not told, but maybe informed, late Monday, Senator Bach and Speaker Thiessen had reached an agreement to keep at the bottom line, going into the 16-17 biennium, $750 million. And keep in mind, the forecast from March showed a budgetary balance of $2.6 billion. And so why should that be a problem to keep $750? We should keep a lot more than that. If members look at the budget, you'll find that the money is going to get eaten up fairly quickly. But I realized in being given that 750 figure, so you hope you go into the next biennium, no matter who's in charge, with some money available for whatever purposes. And 750 seemed like a very solid figure. When I got the figure, however, I realized this is not going to be easy, and it's going to require some changes in the appropriations. Basically, the conversion of ongoing base spending to one-time spending. And so I became aware of this end of the day Monday. I worked all day Tuesday with Mr. Nauman in trying to figure out how we could make this work. And then had a chance to talk to the chairs for the first time yesterday to get recommendations back from them as to how they would meet some of these new budget targets as a consequence of this decision. There are a couple of places where there's some significant displacement in terms of what had been proposed. And I should also tell you that there are several bills moving on their own, but where we track the money through this process, obviously. A very notable example is the MnSCU contract necessity, where that's now being treated as a one-time expenditure. I would expect there'll be a chance to have further conversations with the governor and the House relative to this as the bill proceeds, but to meet the $750 million figure, it was just simply too large of an appropriation. The other significant appropriation where there's a displacement, and this has not passed anything yet, this is within Senator Pappas's pension commission, is a pension proposal which now becomes a one-year proposal in the out years, not a two-year proposal in the out years. Now that actually hasn't passed yet, but we're tracking the money. There's some, the other changes are basically, and I'll go through the spreadsheet, the other changes are basically converting a lot of the grant programs to one-time grants and not base level funding grants. And again, as we go through this, you'll see more of the detail. Now, the other thing I need to tell everybody on this committee and everybody in this room, because I've had all sorts of people, as some of this has become known to a handful of people, and certainly to the chairs, I've had people say, well, I hear the House is doing such and such and such and such, and why can't we do it this way? How can the House do it? And the answer is very simple. The House isn't abiding by the agreement, and we don't have an exact figure. We will show a budgetary balance that's actually a little bit beyond the $750 million in the spreadsheet. I don't have an exact figure for the House. You know, I think they've passed their bill out of Ways and Means, but I don't have the exact number. But the number we have is that they're having a balance of about $600 million. So despite what I'm told is a signed agreement between Senator Bach and Speaker Thiessen, they couldn't abide by that agreement. And I want everybody in this room, whether member or otherwise, to understand that when you see these numbers, and see these numbers in a way that is to be distinguished from House numbers, that's how they did it. They are keeping at the bottom line only $600 million, give or take. We are keeping at the bottom line $750 million, which was the charge I was given by Senator Bach.